What is the read from Brussels about what is happening in London and the fighting that is starting to take place in the cabinet?
Well, I think there's still a wait-and-see mode, basically, from the Brussels side as to the UK positioning. I think it's still not clear what the UK wants when it comes to the future relationship with the EU. At the same time, you have people like David Davis still advocating for the EU to kind of move away from its sequencing approach, talking about the future relationship sooner rather than later. I think if that were to be the case, we would see that the UK still doesn't know what it wants. I think that's the perspective from Brussels right now.
Was it a surprise to see Mr. Hammond in Berlin yesterday talking in an event that was effectively a kind of internal party event? Mr. Schäuble was there, he was speaking, I understand he left, but nevertheless, it does seem as if Mr. Hammond is taking his message to Berlin, not just talking about what he sees as a future for Brexit here in London.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for him to look specifically at Berlin. And in fact, I think that has been the strategy of many in the UK over the last couple of months, to look at Berlin when it comes to find an ally potentially for a softer Brexit. I think the Germans are willing to listen to that, to take these voices into consideration. But again, I think the biggest problem at the end of the day is the conversation in domestic UK politics, whether people like Hammond can prevail. And let's make no mistake, his definition of a softer Brexit in the end merely means to avoid a cliff edge. If you take a step back, last year in autumn, a softer Brexit would have potentially meant continued membership in the single market. That seems to be totally off the table now. So I don't think that the situation has necessarily improved.
Can I ask you, and this is all related, Mr. Macron is going to unveil his labour market reforms today in France. Let's deal with those first of all, and then we'll talk about a kind of wider picture. How much time do you think he's got in his ability to be able to deliver upon this? I've seen various write-ups suggesting that this is a major reform that's about to take place in France. That would cheer up the Germans and make the Germans feel as if this is a guy they can really work with. What are the possibilities in your mind of a big story developing in France behind with what Mr. Macron is going to suggest?
Well, I think chances are that this is really happening. I mean, let's not forget that this was the ticket that Macron campaigned on. That's a very big difference if you compare this to François Hollande. So he really has the public mandate for this in his own presidency, but also with the majority in the National Assembly. And he seems determined to push ahead. And as you say, I think his bigger bet here is that if he is able to demonstrate that he's making progress in France, the next step is past the German elections, basically as of January next year, to take this to the European level and talk about institutional build-out in the Eurozone.